Trump's latest attack on climate science. Donald Trump says it's a scam to say that climate change is a threat to public health. So, the US president has killed off a scientific finding that says it is. The so-called endangerment finding was the basis for nearly all climate laws in the US. Now it's gone. The White House hopes dirty industries can flourish again, including America's petrol car manufacturers. Today, UNU climate expert Christian Downey on what happens when one of the world's largest polluters gives up on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Featured. Christian Downey, professor in the School of Regulation and Global Governance at the Australian National University. When Donald Trump calls climate change a scam, it is never just a soundbite. It is a signal flare, a declaration of intent. And this time, the flare has landed squarely on one of the most important pillars of modern American environmental law, the endangerment finding. The endangerment finding was never a glamorous phrase. It didn't trend on social media or headline campaign rallies. But in 2009, after the landmark Supreme Court case Massachusetts versus Environmental Protection Agency, the Environmental Protection Agency formally determined that greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare. With that, climate change stopped being an abstract environmental concern and became a matter of legal responsibility. The science was clear. Rising temperatures, intensifying heat waves, worsening storms, and spreading diseases posed a direct threat to Americans. Now, with a stroke of political will, that scientific determination has been swept aside. To dismiss climate change as not a threat to public health is to rewrite not just policy but reality. Wildfires do not ask for party affiliation before they burn. Heat waves do not pause at state borders. Asthma rates in children do not spike according to ideology. Yet the erasure of the endangerment finding suggests that evidence itself is optional, negotiable in the face of economic ambition. The White House frames the move as liberation. Liberation from regulation. Liberation for industry. Liberation for American manufacturing, particularly petrol car manufacturers who have long argued that emission standards constrain innovation and inflate costs. In this telling, environmental protections are shackles and fossil fuels are freedom. But what happens when one of the world's largest polluters decides to stop trying? Christian Downey, professor in the School of Regulation and Global Governance at the Australian National University, has long studied the politics of climate governance. From Canberra, he watches Washington's policy swings not as isolated events, but as tremors in a global system. When the United States steps back, Downey warns, it doesn't just affect domestic emissions. It reshapes international expectations. The United States is not merely another country in the climate ledger. It is historically the largest cumulative emitter of greenhouse gases. Its economic size, technological capacity, and diplomatic reach mean that its actions ripple outward. If America signals that climate science is negotiable, others may follow. If it weakens standards, competitors may feel pressure to lower theirs. Climate governance relies on a fragile architecture of trust. Nations pledge emissions reductions under global agreements, invest in clean energy transitions, and coordinate technology sharing because they believe others will do the same. When a major player exits the field or declares the game illegitimate, that trust erodes. Downey describes this as a contagion risk. Not necessarily a rush to abandon climate commitments, but a subtle recalibration. Slower transitions. Softer targets. Delayed action. The atmosphere, of course, does not wait. The irony is that climate change is not just an environmental issue, it is a public health issue woven into daily life. Heat stress increases hospital admissions. Poor air quality worsens cardiovascular disease. Expanding mosquito habitats raise the risk of vector-borne illnesses. To deny the health dimension is to ignore the lived experiences of communities already feeling the strain. And then there is the economic argument. Supporters of deregulation claim that rolling back climate rules will unleash growth. Dirty industries can flourish. Petrol vehicles can remain dominant. Fossil fuel extraction can expand without the burden of compliance. But the global economy is changing. Renewable energy costs have plummeted. Electric vehicles are becoming mainstream. Major trading partners are considering carbon border adjustments that penalize high-emissions goods. In this context, doubling down on fossil fuels may not be economic foresight, but strategic nostalgia. Downey suggests that subnational actors, states, cities, corporations, may attempt to fill the void. We have seen this before. When federal ambition wanes, governors and mayors form coalitions. Companies commit to net zero targets. Investors shift capital toward cleaner technologies. Climate governance fragments, but persists. Yet fragmentation has limits. National policy sets the tone, the baseline, the regulatory certainty investors rely on. Without it, progress becomes uneven and vulnerable to political cycles. There is also the question of credibility. Scientific institutions, from NASA to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, have spent decades building robust climate datasets. Thousands of peer-reviewed studies converge on the same conclusion: greenhouse gas emissions are warming the planet and posing risks to human health. To override such findings is not simply to disagree, it is to challenge the role of science in policymaking itself. What message does that send to young scientists? To medical professionals linking heat waves to mortality spikes? To communities rebuilding after hurricanes intensified by warmer oceans? The endangerment finding may be a technical legal determination, but symbolically, it represented acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that emissions harm people. Acknowledgement that government has a duty to respond. Its removal feels like a retreat from that responsibility. Still, climate change is not undone by proclamation. Carbon dioxide accumulates according to chemistry, not rhetoric. The atmosphere does not read executive orders. In the longer arc of history, political decisions oscillate. Policies are enacted, repealed, reinstated. Courts intervene. Elections reshape priorities. The climate system, however, operates on its own timetable. Delayed action today compounds risk tomorrow. Downey's perspective from Australia, a country intimately familiar with droughts, bushfires, and coral bleaching, offers a sobering reminder. Climate impacts do not respect national narratives. They are shared, interconnected, global. When one of the world's largest emitters signals that reducing greenhouse gases is no longer a priority, the consequences extend beyond its borders. Diplomacy shifts. Markets react. Vulnerable populations feel the pressure first. Perhaps the most profound question is not whether industries will flourish in the short term, but what kind of future is being cultivated. One anchored in 20th century fuels, or one oriented toward 21st century resilience.